Today, we're going to look at 11 Filmic Pro settings that you'll want to get right before you film yourself. Because the last thing you want to do is finish a recording only to realize you have to do it all over again. I film all my Talking Head YouTube videos on my iPhone, and I always double check these settings before I hit record. You can get your own copy of these 11 settings by clicking on the link in the description below. Just click that link to get your own PDF. That way you don't have to memorize or write these settings down. And for today's demonstration, Mr. Rabbit will be serving as our model. Different phones have different lens options, but my iPhone 11 Pro, for example, has 4. And one of these is a bad choice to use. I'll explain in a moment. And each lens has a different aperture or f-stop. The lower the f-stop, then the more light and data is let in. You can quickly choose your lenses right here. At the top we have our selfie. Next we have our telescopic, then our wide, and then our ultra wide. The wide angle lens has an f-stop of 1.8. The ultra wide has a 2.4 aperture, the telephoto a 2.0, and the selfie a 2.2 aperture. I like the wide angle lens because it puts the focus on the subject and has the lowest aperture. That means you're going to get more light and data into your lens. But beware, I know it's tempting to use the selfie because you can see yourself on screen and adjust your framing, but the selfie typically has the lowest resolution when recording. I highly recommend using the lenses on the back of your phone for higher quality video. YouTube states the standard aspect ratio for YouTube on a computer is 16:9. If your video has a different aspect ratio, the player will automatically change to the ideal size to match your video to the viewer's device. To select your aspect ratio, simply come down here to the gear icon, then up to resolution, and at the very top you have all of these choices of aspect ratios. Starting on the right, you can see as the display changes as we choose different aspect ratios. So the best one for YouTube is 16:9. According to the worldwide screen resolution stats, the most commonly used resolution across mobile, desktops, and tablets was 1920 by 1080. So you're safe exporting and uploading your video in that size. However, I recommend recording in 4K, so you can have the option of zooming in and out or making jump cuts while still maintaining high quality in a 1920 by 1080 video. To choose your resolution, again, click on the gear icon, click on resolution, and your resolution is right here in the center. I'm currently at 4K, but if you click on that button, you have several options all the way down to 540. 720 and 540 I would advise against. Have a minimum of 1080p or up to 4K. Filmic Pro comes with 4 bitrate options. Extreme, 100 to 120 megabits per second. Filmic Quality, which is 64 to 75 megabits per second. Apple Standard, or your phone's standard, which is around 50 megabits per second. And Economy, which is below your phone's standard. In a Talking Head video, bitrate may not make much of a difference. However, if you want to save some storage, lowering your bitrate to quality or even standard will have almost no noticeable effect on your video. For more of a comparison on Filmic Pro's 4 levels of bitrates, check out my video here, link is in the description. Again, to choose those bitrates, click on your gear icon, click on resolution, and they're all here at the very bottom. I prefer Filmic Quality. If we go ahead and click on our gear icon and we hit on the audio button, I have 3 file formats to choose from: PCM, AIFF, and AAC. YouTube lists AAC and PCM as supported file formats. PCM is a better choice if you plan on making significant adjustments in audio post-production. AAC takes up less space. This is a better option if you don't plan on tweaking your audio much in the editing process. Since I like to do a little bit of tweaking, I'm going to come over here and choose PCM. Now if we get out of here and we look over to the right, we have our audio meter. If set too low, the quality will be poor. If set too high, you may peak and cause distortions. It's suggested to keep it around -10 to -12. Here's a little tip for you. If you click on your gear icon and you click guides, then you'll notice the horizontal and vertical bars. My tip is to slide your audio bar so it's level with the horizontal line on your screen. The human eye has trouble differentiating video after 24 frames per second, and it's probably best to use frame rates anywhere from 24 to 30 for talking head videos. Typically, movies are filmed in 24 frames per second, so if you want what is considered a more cinematic shot, then use 24. If you want something that looks a bit smoother and realistic, then 30 may be a better choice. To access your frame rates, click on the gear icon, click up here on frame rate, and you have all of your choices here at the top. I personally like 24 frames per second. Shutter speed has a direct connection with your frame rate and the brightness or exposure of your video. You want to set your shutter speed based on the frame rate you choose. The rule of thumb is to make your shutter speed double your frame rate. So if your frame rate is 24, then have a 1/48 shutter speed. When you follow this rule, your video will achieve a more natural looking motion blur and thus look more natural and less choppy to the viewer. To adjust your shutter speed, go ahead and click on your manual controls button right here, and we'll see our shutter speed at the bottom. Right above that is ISO, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But in order to adjust our shutter speed, let's first lock our ISO. Just simply click on that number and it will turn red. You can then adjust your shutter speed by moving the exposure wheel. Since I'm filming in 24 frames per second, I'll choose 1/48. Your ISO and shutter speed work together to set your exposure. If you use automatic exposure, then Filmic Pro will choose these settings for you. And this is your exposure reticle right here. For automatic exposure, unlock it and it's white. Since we've already determined your resolution, which then affects your shutter speed setting, somewhere around 100 to 200 is ideal. Again, to set your ISO, click on your manual controls button. Now we're going to lock our shutter speed. It's in red, and we can adjust ISO by adjusting the exposure wheel. Since 100 to 200 is typically ideal, I'm going to go pretty low to just about 100. For better color and healthier looking skin, you want to have your white balance set. And all you need to do is come down here to the bottom left and click on this icon. Now we have our white balance control panel. Notice down here at the bottom right of that panel, we have AWB, which stands for automatic white balance. Now when you come in, you'll probably have yours in blue. In automatic white balance, notice as I move my hand into and out of frame, the white balance adjusts as I move. This can end up causing color and brightness changes in your video. In order to get around that, you have two choices. If you click on the AWB button again, it turns red. That stands for white balance locked, so nothing will change. You also have the option of clicking one more time and it turns to orange. This is where automatic white balance is locked, but it only locks when you hit the record button. I personally prefer it locked. Now, if we tap our manual controls button right here, in the middle of the screen, we don't have our circle and square. If we tap again, they're back. On the left is our exposure reticle as a circle. On the right is our focus reticle as a square. Right now, they're both locked. But as far as our focus goes, let's tap it once, it turns white, and now it's unlocked. You can move your focus reticle anywhere to adjust focus on that particular spot. And you have a few options. You can either put it in the center, it'll set focus on whatever is within that box. You can double tap it. This will be general exposure to whatever is in frame. And if I double click again, put it back, you can simply click it once and it locks focus. When you're taking your talking head video, if you're not going to move much, then you might want to keep it locked. However, I prefer leaving it unlocked because sometimes I move my head toward the camera and away from the camera. Also, sometimes I like to hold up objects closer to the camera so the audience has a better view. Once you've decided on what settings work best for you, I suggest saving them as a preset in Filmic Pro. That way you don't have to go through the same setup each time you film. Instead, you only need to choose that preset and those settings will instantly be ready. To save or use presets, simply click your gear icon, and at the very top right we have our presets option. Click there and notice I already have a few presets for myself, but let's go ahead and save this one. Click save and let's give it a name. Talking head, click save, and there it is. presets can save you time and a few headaches. Filming video on your phone is great with the Filmic Pro app, and editing your video on your phone is also a convenient option with the LumaFusion app. See how you can film and edit cinematic video using both Filmic Pro and LumaFusion in this video right here.